a little space where we can actually show these guys what we did to actually have those numbers in place. So what we are going to do, we can now come here and do a copy, because what we only want from these points, we only need the formats. We can do a copy, Control C to copy that, and we are going to move down to row. Let's paste it, I think, to row. Let's use this one, row 45. We leave just one space, one line there. We are going to paste that from that point. So we can also try to use the scroll key to bring that into focus, Fn plus C. We want to have this, but let's first paste. Let's first do a paste, Control V, to have that pasted there. Then now we can use the F. We can use the F and N, Fn plus C for us to make sure that at least we have this in focus. So that's what we have for now. We've copied those values. Now at least we can be able to see those figures there. So we can now come and try to make adjustments because we've gotten all the formattings that we need. So we have all these numbers. We have all these numbers down here. But now, these values you're seeing, we are going to use the inputs. Actually, what we are going to do, we are going to make sure that this column here, column 22, column F for the year 2022 actuals, we are going to put these in formulas. Let's just use formulas. In other words, these very things that you are seeing, these very items you are seeing here, these are the information that we copied from the income statement. So we can just put in formulas instead of wasting time here by copying the inputs, and at the same time we do the computation. We can just pick everything. We make sure that these are all going to be in formulas, because we are going to compute everything that we are going to have in common size income statement is supposed to be computed. In other words, we are just going to pick the inputs from the income statement. So that's what we are going to do. And we are definitely going to make sure that those are actually formulas for those values. Then we can copy and paste, or we can do a fill right to make sure that we have these other things in place also. So let's now try to put in some formulas in this for this column F. And when we have the values for this, if we have the values from this point, then we can actually, let's first try to have these values in place, and now we can be able to have some of those in place also. So let's try to compute the values here for the whole of that row. If we finish it, that column, then we can try to fill right, and we get the values for those other areas. So we make sure that those are actually formulas, and after putting in the formulas, we can now be able to do the rest. So what we are going to do, since these are going to be formulas, we are going to highlight, shift down arrow. Since all these are going to be formulas, so we need to change their font colors. In other words, formulas, we say they are going to be in black, then inputs are going to be in blue. So what we are going to do, we change. So we go to Alt. We know font colors are in the home section of the ribbon. So we hit H for home, and then FC for font color. Then we can just select that black as you've seen from that point. But we have these values, as we've said last time, these values that we put in brackets, we customized them, and that's why for them they can't just change. So we need to go to the format section. Remember, those were pinned in blue, so we need to come here and change it to black. That's the only way we can actually come and change here. So you've seen now we've changed them to to black. Hey, they are not all, even these. We come here and also do the same thing. These are supposed to be in black, because this is what we set in the first place. Meaning, if you do a mistake and you don't remember, you'll find some of the things not changing. So that's what we have for now. We put all those in black, and what we have to do, we need now to put in the formulas. But now, the way you make a common sized income statement is by dividing each line item by the revenue. In other words, we are going to divide everything over the revenue and we get those percentages. So you have to watch carefully what we do, because you need to understand how we do this. So we are going to start from here. We are going to start from the very cell for revenue. From that very same point, we go, we divide the same value. So we are going now to go, we are going to put in the equal sign and go up to the other side of the income statement. So we are dividing that same cell, because now we are getting a revenue over revenue. That's a 1. Of course, we are getting the value in the revenue divided by the revenue number, which is going to give you 1. Because we are getting the revenue that we have divided by the revenue. But remember, we are picking this information. You can use the page up to move to these other places. But if you can use what I'm using, the up arrow, it will be fine also. So we get that value from there. So it is that value, and we are dividing it by the same value. So now we come and hit enter. And we are getting a 1 there. The reason as why we are getting a 1 is because we are dividing revenue over revenue. But now here, for these points here, we are going to take equal sign there. We grab the cost of goods sold, we divide by the revenue, and we see the percentage. But now, before we proceed to this, there is something I want also to discuss. On this one, the one we've done, you are seeing we've gotten our revenue divided by revenue, and we got a 1. But remember, in our formula, the formula is going to be for those, we are going to get the line item, this is the formula. We divide by revenue value. So what this means is that we shall get revenue divided by revenue, the revenue. We get cost of goods sold over revenue. We get gross profit over revenue. In other words, we are just getting percentage. It is a percentage of revenue. In other words, we are trying to get what is the percentage of that item from our revenue. In other words, if it is a tax, what is the percentage of that tax from our revenue? That's what we are trying to get out. That's what we are trying to get from this point. So what this means is that the revenue, the denominator here, is supposed to be locked. In other words, if you don't use these dollar signs, it's okay, as long as you know what you're doing. But it would be better if you are using these dollar signs, because we are making sure that we are locking the revenue in one place. It is only these other things that are going to be changing. So we can come here and change. We put in the dollar sign there, and we also put in the dollar sign there. We are locking the whole cell. But you make sure as you are putting in those dollar signs, because if you put in a dollar sign wrongly, then you are also going to have a problem. The implication there for putting 2 dollar signs is that we've locked that one cell. Now for this one, for revenue, we've locked that one cell. But remember, we are going to copy and paste to these other places, which means we are only going to lock the row alone, not locking the column. In other words, we are only going to put in 1 dollar sign. That $1 sign is going to be in front of the revenue value. That revenue value is what is F, it is this place. So remember, we are getting these values, we are picking them from our income statement. But now here there is something you can change. If you come and hit enter, it will also give you a 1. But there is also something we need to note. Before we put in these answers here, let me just do Ctrl Z to undo those values. Back to that. We had a 150 in here. So we can also say equal sign the cell we have, that is F45. We divide by this one. We go up here and pick that one. So it can also work. It can also work if you put in, you lock these cells. But now we are going to use that F17. Let's use the previous, not to confuse you, the previous value. This is, we divide by F17, and we are going to lock only that low 7. Shift, we hit enter, we get that 1. Then now we can copy the formulas and we paste them downwards in that cell, because we have already put in the values that we want. So we've put in the values that we want. So hope you can be able to see what exactly we are doing now. So we can now copy that and we fill those cells. But now remember, these values are supposed to be in percentages. They are supposed to be in percentages. We are seeing it is only 1, but these common size statements, they are always in percentages. We need to put percentages there. But we can put those percentages maybe when we have finished these. We have finished doing the computations. So what we can do now, we can select these 2 cells, because we can't select the whole thing. Remember, if we try to select all these, remember there are some open spaces there. So what we are going to do, let's first open those 2 cells, because there are those open spaces which don't have numbers, so we can't just highlight everything. Let's first highlight those 2 cells for revenue and cost of goods sold. And now we are going to use paste special. We go to Alt ES for paste special. So we highlight Alt ES. So let's try to put in these formulas. We are going to get these values here. Let's do like 2, because I'm seeing if we don't, we shall get that, divide by that one, divide by the revenue, and we can also try to lock that. There are 2 options here. You can say you are not going to lock these values. This one, we need to remove that negative, because there is no way you are going to do. So now what we want to do, let's come to this point here. So we want now to compute in this value here. We put in the equal sign. We are done this. We said that divide by that same number. We lock this one. Shift $, hit enter. We are getting our 1. Now there is something I want you to know, that from because when we get this value, this one here, this one says negative 67,500,000. But now from our formatting, remember when we were formatting these negatives, the outcome here is going to come as a negative, and it will not allow it. What will happen is that when you try to put in this one divided by this, it will bring a 0, because the result is supposed to be a negative. Remember, our negatives, we say they are going to be in bracket. So you'll find that this value here will be a 0 in bracket. So what do? We make sure we convert this back. We removed the formattings from this point here, and we put them with their negatives. And these are looking like hard codes. Those values look like hard codes. That's the only way you can be able to have those values displayed with their negatives. Then we shall eliminate the negatives later. So what we do, we come here, we put in an equal sign, we come and pick the values from this point. We can do like 2, then I show you the other way we can do it. We are picking this value, divide by the 11, but this 11 is supposed to be locked. Even if you don't lock it, it will still give you the same answer. So it is bringing a negative, and this negative it is bringing, when you get this, because this one has a sum function, that's why you are seeing it is becoming a positive. So if you be in that cell and you hit your alt, if you are using this, we can copy, Control C, we copy that, we come to this point, we use alt, sorry, we can first copy this, Control C, we come to this, we use alt ES, then down to, we use the down arrow, we use formulas. It means we have copied this, the value here. If you hit in that, you will see that it is the same. We've copied the formula the other side. We can also come here and highlight. We highlight using the down arrow. We hit alt key, ES. But now, if you hit the ES, it will not bring the values. The reason why it is not bringing those values is because of the other formattings that we had in here. So we have to make sure that these values, we put them manually. We can automate them, but you have to be copying every time. Then you highlight, you go to alt ES, then you use the down arrow to paste. It is the same thing here. You can hit the F4 key to repeat the last command. But here, we are basically interested in getting can use the alt key, ES, down formulas, enter. We put in those values. But now what we want all these values to be in percentage. If you try to change this, Control Shift 5, it puts that in a percentage. If we highlight downwards, shift down arrow, alt, ES, it will not work. We have to put all these values manually. It is because of the other, but now here I want to remove these negatives. Let's first finish filling all these values, then I show you how to remove these negatives without changing the other formats. Then we can also come to this is Control Shift 5. Then we go to this Control Shift 5. Then we also change this one, Control Shift 5. So we are going to change these values in here. These ones with the negatives, can tap the Control key to highlight all these values at once, even this. Those values, we are just going to change their formatting. We'll put them in brackets. Actually, we don't want them in brackets, but we just want to remove those negatives. We make them positive numbers. Control 1, change them to black. If we do that, it means we are going to disorganize these values. Remember, they are in percentages. First undo that. We can come here and we put a negative. This is one way we can be able to remove the negative value, because we can't report in a negative. But now, when we remove these negatives, we have to make sure that we change. The other side will be, we are also going to see how we can change those values. We are going to assume that these are just negatives, because what we are doing here, we are just providing the values, but we don't want these negatives, because there is no change that you can say that we are going to report in that. So instead of summing here, we are just going to subtract. So it will be this minus this. So we are going back to our mathematical aspects. So even this, instead of adding, we shall be subtracting. Even here, shall be subtracting. So we've been able to adjust those values to that point. So if you want, you can also try to increase in it. Maybe you put in some decimals. we can try to adjust them to that point by putting one decimal place. So those are the values that we have computed from that point. So now what you have to do is to make sure that we can now highlight these values, because we are going to copy all the way to the other last values, because we are going to get these other values here. We are not going the formulas are already in place, so we highlight, shift down arrow, then we are going to use the same shift to the right, and we have to make sure that at least we have those values in there. So what we are going to do, we are going to do a fill right, that's Control R, and we shall have all those values filled up. And these values are basically following the other figures that we have in the income statement. But now, having provided those values, as you can see them, we have done a nice analysis of the income statement, and we've put those values in percentages. So effectively, what we can understand from this particular schedule is that the gross profit here, you are seeing from that perspective, we are seeing that gross profit is 55% of the company's revenue. In other words, the profit we've got after removing the costs we've incurred to produce those goods, the cost we've incurred to sell those goods is actually 45%. When we less it from our revenue, we remain with a gross profit of 55%. And out of our line item, revenue line, the company is capturing about 39 or 38% from the what? Here, from this perspective, the earnings before tax. You are seeing it is, this one is 38.9, 39, 38, 39.5. So we can take it as a rough average of, let's say, 38 or 39% in earnings before interest and tax. And now we are giving out, the company is giving away about 11 to 12%, 11 or 12% in taxes. You are seeing from the tax rates that we have here, we have 11.7, 11.7, 11.5, 11.8, 12.1, 12.4, 12.6. So average wise, we are around 11 to 12%. That's what we are giving out in terms of taxes. Meaning the company is going to be left with the net income of about 26 to 27%. Because the average value here, this is 27.3, 27.3, 26.9, 27.6, 28 point. So we take an average. We say maybe it is 26% or 28%. So that's what we are, that's what is falling through to the net incomes. So by copying the other values we've seen, the values we've copied from our income statement here, we've been able to use that information and we'll finalize this income statement, custom common sized income statement. So we've relied on the information that is within the income statement. We've taken all the formats that are within the income statement to make sure that at least we have this common size statement built up. And now, what's great on this is that we've also managed to change the global units marker up there on the top and the years from the assumption section of this financial model. And we've been able to make sure that the schedule is up to date. In other words, our model is up to date. When you change the figures, if you change the years, if you change the currency, you'll have an updated version of this model. So that's what we've done so far. So now, let's jump ahead to the next video, and we are going to have a next lesson. We are going to look at some of what if analysis, and where we can analyze sensitivities. In other words, we are going to analyze sensitivities in a sense of increments, in a sense that we may increase all the line items on the income statement by, say, 10%, 20%, or 5%, just to see what will be the impact of that increase on those numbers within our income statement. So let's jump into the next video, and we will see you there, where we are going to be talking about percent setup. In other words, we are putting percentage increase, and we want to see how we can be able to set up those percentage increases. We'll see you there. Hello viewers, welcome back to our channel. Now we are looking at percentage setup. In other words, we are looking at the increment. We want to make sure that we set up this increment right, and we have something to do. So what we are going to do here, we are going to install one last section in this financial model, and we are going to look at the percentage change to the income statement. In other words, we are looking at the changes in the income statement, whether it's going to be an increase or it's going to be a decrease, but it's going to be a percentage change. But in other words, we want to look at when the percentage is increasing. That's what we are basically going to look at. So what we are going to do here is we are going to head up to this section of the income statement, the section for income statement. That's it. And what we are going to do in this space, we are going to make sure that we grab these line items for the whole income statement. In other words, we are going to grab the entire income statement, because the reason we are taking it is we want to leverage on those formats that we are already having in place. So what we are going to do is we are going to do a copy. We are going to copy the whole income statement. We need everything from this point to there, to that point. So we're going to do a copy. It's Control C. We copy everything from there, and we are now going to paste those values. You can use page down to move down, or use the down arrow. We are going to paste, let's paste them to this row 60, and specifically we are going to paste it in B60. So let's do a paste, Control V. We've pasted all this information that we have here. So that's our last section that we wanted to have there. So we've gotten the whole entire income statement, and now we want also to insert a copy of different rows. And usually with the use of the mouse, we could just click on any given row that we want. If maybe you want to add in a section here for, say, row 61 here, maybe this is where we want to insert. That's where we want to insert another section. So if you want to do that from that point, then we have to right click in that here, because if you right click here, you'll have that option to insert from this point. Then you can be able to insert things that you want to do from that point. So you can click the insert and be able to see that we've put in that. You can undo that, Control Z to undo that. But now when you're using the keyboard, of course, when you're using the keyboard, you find that things are going to be a little bit different. So what we are going to be, we are going to this cell right here, cell, because we want to insert in this cell like the way we've done. But this time around, we are going to use the keyboard. So what do? We come and put our cursor in this cell, B61. cell B61, and what we are going to do when we are in that cell for B61, because we want to insert it here, we can come to this B62. We want the cell to be inserted in this point. So what we are going to do, we have to move to B62 in that position where there is revenue. And what we are going to do, we go to Alt, we go to I for data. Let's first see the escape key, Alt. We go to we go to N for insert. Sorry, this N is for charts, putting charts there. So it is Alt. So this I we did not put it here because the I is for, it has options that we did not put it here. But if it was there, you just go to Alt I R and you'll find it has inserted the value that we want. The shortcut is Control. Let's first go for undo. It is Alt I R. It has inserted the right column using the right arrow for inserting the row. And then if you want to repeat that, you can just tap the F4 key to insert another row, or you can just use Alt I R. It has inserted some more 2 rows. It has inserted row 62 and row 63. These 2, that one and that one. Those are the ones we've inserted. So what we are going to do now is want to go down here to this cell B62. B62 right here. That's the cell B62. So what we are going to do, we are now going to copy the label for revenue here, this label here. Control Z, we copy that, and we are going to put it in this area here, B62. We do a paste, Control V to paste that revenue there. Because now what we want to set up the percentage issue that we are looking at. And we just want to increase what we are going to do, we want to modify the revenue. Because we want to modify it and we have a percentage increase, we have an increase. And then what we are going to do, we are going to put in a value in here, in this cell D62. We are going to put in a value 10%. We want a value for 10%. Now, what we can do is we can pop into this cell F52. F52, because we want to use these formats. Remember that 10% I've just put it there. We can come and paste, copy this. We just want to, we do a copy, but this time around we just want to use those formats that we have there. Those formats that we have in that cell F52. So what we are going to do, we've copied those values, and now we are going to go to cell D62 where we inserted the other figures. Let's go to this cell D62. We go to D. We are now in that cell D62. That's where we inserted that 10%. So we want to put in those formats. So what we are going to do, we are going to do a paste. So if we paste Control V, now we can come here. Sorry for this. What we have to do here in this cell, let's just paste Control V. We are copying this, Control, then we come and paste it there, Control V. So we now need to type in 10%, and you're seeing that we've gotten those values. Because what we were interested in, they are those formats that we needed. So let's now try to type this, to hit the scroll key to just move to be able to move a little bit, to be able to have this into focus like that. We hit the scroll key again. Now we've gotten out of it. So we've now got our values. We've got everything that we need. Now what we are going to do is we have to make sure that this is center aligned. Let's just align that cell to, we have this number aligned. So we go to Alt H for home because we know alignment is within that cell. So we go to SC for alignment, that is center alignment. So that's center aligned now. We also want that D62 to be a hard code number. In other words, we want that to be an input. So we have to change the color to blue. So we go to Alt H for home and FC for font color. And now we can pick from this recent one. We can select that blue color. So we've gotten that in control. Now we have our blue color right there. So what we want also to draw some attention to this cell D62. We want to make sure that at least we have some unique things that are going to differentiate it from other cells. So let's try to put there a little nice border just to have it covered within the border because it's an input. So let's try to have some control. We get some attention from the audience. So let's go to Alt H for home. Then we are going to B for borders and M for more borders. Now we are going to click on this little dotted border right here. This one. Let's go with this one, the first one. And now it's going to be on the entire cell. And now we can come here and hit enter. When you get out of that cell, you find that we've gotten that border for cell D6 in place. Now up here in cell B60, we still have income statement as our labeling there. So we want also to change that to percentage change. So we hit the F2 key to get into that cell. You can also double click maybe to highlight. Let's delete that and put percentage. Let's just put percent change and we hit enter. So we've now changed that. So what we can also do, since these are all going to be formulas here, whatever we are having here is supposed to be formulas, except this. We've changed that one is going to be an input. So whatever we are going to have from that point is supposed to be formulas. So what are we going to do? So what we are going to do is we are going to make sure that at least some of those values that are within the blue font are going to be changed to black. So we can select this entire range from F64 here. We can highlight that to this point here, F60, shift down arrow, the whole of this 76. Can highlight all of those values. But remember, we set these values in the bracket using the conditional formatting. So we may try to change and they don't change. But let me show you what I wanted you to get. Let's also highlight these values. We are going to remove all of them. So if we try to change this to Alt H for home, then FC for font color, and now we can pick this black here. You will see that not all values are going to be changed. These values that are within the brackets, they will not change. The reason as why they are not going to change is because of how we set that in the beginning. We set them using the conditional formatting, sorry, the custom. So we have to highlight. So let's try to highlight this. Shift this side, hit the control, go to that side, hit the control, highlight that. We highlight also that. So we are going to change them at once. Control 1 to go to format cells. Now this time we are on number formats. This one, instead we can just change this. We can just delete that same item, or we can just come here and change them to we can change them to black from here. Can just come here and type here black, but it will be when we put in the formulas and we try to automatically generate the rest, we may not get answers. So the best thing is to come here and we delete those. So hit OK, and when you come here you find that those negatives they have come back. So they have come back because they are going to change as we substitute in the form, we put in the formulas. So we've now changed those to black. So now what we want to do, we want to make sure that we are going to make sure that at least those values are adjusted for the increment. But now you are seeing the whole of these numbers, they look to be a little bit funny. These numbers, some of them they have gotten points which we didn't put. So what we are going to do, we are going to set all those numbers to 0. That's what we are going to do, because we are going to use formulas. At the end of the day, we were just copying these to help us get the nice formattings that we have there. So what we are going to do is we are going to set these numbers to 0. So let's go down into this revenue and this cost of goods, and we try to set them to 0. So all these numbers are going to be set to 0. Then we go to SG&A, also we set it to 0. We go to that, we set it also to 0, even that. Can also go to taxes and we also set that to 0. The only thing that we need from that point is we only need the formattings only. We don't need those values. So we don't care how they look, but we only find ourselves interested in the formattings that are within those different cells. So what we are going to do, we have also to set these other values also to 0. So since we have all these values from F64 to F76, they are all set to 0, we can now highlight across using the shift key. So we can, maybe we first highlight this one with the down arrow, and now we can use Control Shift right arrow just to highlight everything there. And what we want to do, a Control R, which is a fill right. We just need all those numbers to be 0. We only needed these formattings. They are the ones that we are going to use to change some of the things that you are seeing. So let's now put in formulas. So we've seen that we've actually set all these line items to 0. But setting those line items to 0, it doesn't mean that we have also cleared away our formatting. So we still have these formats, the good formats that we put in place already. So we can also see that if you go to this, you'll find that the sum function is still there. You see, the sum function is still there. We are also seeing that the EBITDA, their functions are still there. When you go to EBIT, the functions are also still there. So we have everything still in place. So we have all those nice formats that we created. So now everything has been copied right to the next level. So here we can see that everything is now set up. Remember, what we are interested in is setting up the percentage change. Of course, we have set up these values here. We have put in the row, we have put in the different sections that we wanted. So what we are going to look at in the next video, we are going to see how we can apply that 10% change all the way through that income statement. That's what we are going to do in the next video. So in the next video, we are going to look at the percentage changes. So let's see you in the next video as we are doing the computations for these values that we've not filled. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now looking at percentage change. So what we are going to do from here is we are going to apply this 10% boost. This 10% boost to our income statement. This is what we are going to do. We are going to apply that 10% to the whole income statement. But what we are going to do first is use some naming. So we are going to name this cell right here, this cell D62. That cell D62 as increase. We are going to name that cell D62 as increase. And then we use that name increase in the formula in order to make sure that we fill this income statement. So let's start off by popping into this cell, that D62 that has the 10%. And if you like using the mouse, you can click right here where it says D2. You can click right there and then you write the word increase. And if you write that the word increase, that will change the name of the cell from D62 to increase. But we prefer to use the keyboard. So with the cursor in this cell D62, we are going to tap Alt and then we go to M. We hit M for formulas and then another M for defining name, and then we go to D to define the name. And when you hit D, you'll see that this dialog box comes up, and for the name we are going to type there the word increase, just like that. And then we are going to come here and hit OK, or we hit enter. And you'll see that from when we are pointing to this, when you point to that, you'll see that it changes to increase. So that's what we wanted to first do. And now we can see that the word increase has come up in that name box. So now we want to start putting in formulas. We want to start putting in the right formula, the first formula right in this cell F62. We put in the formula there, and we want to effectively take the company's revenue and multiply it through by 1 plus that increase, because what we are basically doing, we are inflating these values by 10%. In other words, we are finding increase. We are increasing those values from the income statement and we inflate them by 10%. That's basically what we are doing. There is nothing is going to change from what we are doing, because we are basically looking at that very item and we increase it by 10%. So the other one will get the revenue value and we multiply by 1.1. But we don't want to put in any hard code numbers. We want to use formulas. In other words, we want to have these values when they are dynamic. That's why we are not using numbers. So let's put in an equal sign here, equal sign, and where we are going, we want to use, you can actually use the page up button. You can use the page up button to be able to go and select the 11, but if you want, you can use the down arrow, sorry, the up arrow, to go straight to your income statement section and you pick out that value for revenue, which is this. That is the value that we are picking out. So we have that value in place. We are multiplying that value by, you multiply, then you open bracket, 1 plus the increase. Of course, now you can see the formula from here, because down there you can't see. You can check from this formula, the formula bar. So we open the bracket, and now we put a 1 plus. Now what we are going to do, we are going to just type in the word increase. Increase. You will see that that increase, it has come up. When that comes up, you just hit the tab key and the word will be selected. So the word is now selected. We need now to close the brackets, and then we can have the formula in place. Close the bracket with shift, then you hit the 0. It is the one that has the closing bracket. So this is the formula that we are using right here. And now we are going to hit the enter. You will see that we have inflated that value. The value has been, you see, the value has been 150,000. So we are just inflating that 150,000 by 10%. So you can try to prove it from here. Equal sign 150,000 times 10%, 0.1. It gives you that. So it will be equal sign the 150,000 plus this increment, and that gives us 165,000, which is the same value that we have here. So that's basically what we are trying to prove. So that's what we've gotten here. So we've seen that it has come up well, and we want, maybe we can now use the scroll key to bring this into focus. Then we can bring it into focus so that we can be able to see everything that we are working on. So now it is better. We can now see whatever we are working on. So we've put in that formula, and now we want to, so you may find when you are not able to see the formula, you can just come into this cell, you hit the F2 key, and you'll be able to see the formula there. Because the other side you are not able to see the formula, it is F17, that is the revenue. We increased it by this percentage increase you are seeing up here. And that's what we've done, and that's how our formula looks like. So what we are going to do, we are going to grab that revenue from this very cell, so we can hit enter. So we are going to grab that revenue that we have in that cell F, it is F65. That's what we've computed, but we grabbed the revenue from F75, and we've seen that that cell is not locked. Because if we are to lock it, it means we are going to just maintain that value which is there for revenue alone. But since revenue keeps on changing, we have to leave it unlocked. So if leaving it unlocked will allow us to move around and do a copy, as we are multiplying that by 1 plus this increase of 10%. So I hope now you can be able to guess what we are going to do next. What we are going to do is we are going to do a copy. That is Control C. When we do that, we are going now to highlight. We are going to highlight all the way down across to cost of goods sold. Shift down arrow. Then what we are going to do from this point, we are going to use Alt ES to paste special. And now we are going to use the down arrow to go down to formulas, and then we can hit enter. We have some of these values, they are coming as negatives, so we know what to do from that point. We shall change them later. So let's first work on these values, and now we finalize them. Now what we are going to do down to fill these other sections that we have, for us to be able to fill these other sections that you are seeing, These other sections for SG&A, depreciation, interest, taxes, and all that, we need to make sure that we first highlight. The first option is to use the F4 key. You highlight, then you do the same for the rest, taxes, depreciation, and all that. And that's how fast we can be able to go by using the keyboard. But now, for us, what we are going to do, we are going to make sure that we go slowly. So you can also come here and do Alt ES, down to formulas, you paste there. We do the same for this. You can highlight, Shift down arrow, Alt ES, use the down arrow to go to formulas, hit enter. We do the same to this, Alt ES, use the down arrow to go to formulas, hit enter. So we've been able to put in these values. We are seeing these values like it's not all that coordinated. We hit the F4 tool, that's a sum. Yeah, that's right. This one for this, yeah. Then for this, we can now come here and put in the formula. Equal sign this plus this, then plus that. So for this one, you hit the F4, you'll find it is this plus this. Yeah, so we are done. We've now gotten everything filled up. So we have everything in there. We have whatever information that we needed to have in that aspect. And what we are now going to do, we are going to look at other ways how we can be able to fill the rest to the right hand side. So what we are going to do, we are going to copy this entire section down here, the whole of this, Shift down arrow. We are going to copy the whole of this and then we paste. So we can copy this, can highlight this, and we'll do a few right just to have these values filled up. Control R. That is, we've done a few right. So we have those values in there. So even if you try this, you'll find that it is G, then we multiply by the increment. So that's how you are seeing these numbers. Maybe we can try to Alt 1 to just reduce, Alt 2 to reduce them to near 0 decimal places. Can come here and put in the separators. So you can just move those separators. Though have those negative numbers, those we shall format them at once when we have done. So we've now finished copying all the information that we need. But now there is something we spoke about of using these namings. We've seen we've been able to use the keyboard and we put in the naming. We named the cells. And then we incorporated these names of increase right here in this cell. We have been able to incorporate the word increase within our formula. And we've been able to have all these numbers. But now, you can also see we've used the naming here to name that cell to the word increase. And it is very easy for us to access that within the formulas as we are building. But it is definitely our preference. I always prefer not to use or to avoid using the name cells or naming within our financial model because it can be a little bit difficult for us to audit. When you are auditing this financial model, it becomes hard if at all you have used naming of cells. And you can see that the increase here, we see that this increase, it is reflecting here. It is within this line that is at site. But just imagine if we had named those cells and those cells were now on a different sheet. Maybe they were the name that we used was on this cover page. The question is, how are you going to be able to do the audit of the financial model? It will be hard because if you encounter such names when you're auditing those financial statements, it's going to be a little bit hard when you're using tracing precedence and dependence, all that thing, especially when those names they are on a different sheet. But now, as you are auditing, maybe to give us how best can we use it, or how best can we be able to audit those financial models that are having names. So if you encounter names like the ones that we've seen when you're auditing a financial model, you can also look for those names in the name manager. You can see them right up here from these formulas. Then you go to name manager. When you hit the name manager, you will see the things that we've named. We have gross profit, we have increase, we have print area, we have SG&A. Those are the things that we actually named, and we can be able to see them under that format, that formula section. So when you're using the keyboard to go in the same place, you will just go to Alt, M for formulas, and N2 for name manager. You'll be able to see the things, and you have those gross profit, SG&A, increase. They are all listed there in that name manager, and that can help you as well when you are auditing the model. So that's what we have for now. So our model looks great. Maybe we change these negatives. Changing those negatives is okay. We've been doing it, so you know where to go. Go to format cells, you type in 0, semicolon, you put in the color you want. Maybe we do that. Let's just highlight that. We go to Control 1, then we look at this negative. We go to custom, and we are going to put in, we want them to 0 decimal place, semicolon. You open square brackets. We want them in black. Close the square brackets. You open the brackets to 0 decimal place. You close the bracket. They are now being changed. So those negatives have been now changed to brackets. So that's basically what we can do, especially when we are doing some computations like those ones. So we are all now done, but there are few extra things or extra features that we can add to our financial model, and it will add some value on the model, and it will take the model to the next level. So what we are going to see, we are going to look at the navigational columns, but that is going to be in the next video. So we see you there as we are looking at the navigational columns, or the navigational column. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now looking at navigational column. So one of the things that you may have noticed is that we needed to navigate up and down. In other words, we needed to move upwards and downwards, and we've done it quite a bit in this model. For example, we've been using the up arrow, the down arrow. We've been using the page ups, and we've also been using the page downs just to navigate up and down a little bit. Now, if you try to zoom in, maybe we try to zoom in a little bit with that Control Alt minus. So we can try to zoom in a little bit. Control Alt. We try to zoom in. So we can now see. Can try to zoom in a little bit more from there. Let's try to zoom it out a bit, at least there. If you try to move, you can see that we have the whole income statement, is the whole module. So you can try to see that we have the whole module. So we have zoomed in just like that, and now want to go all the way to the top for assumption section. That's where we are now. You can see that this model is becoming quite big for us. In other words, it is now been stacked vertically. We've been building each model or each section onto each other. So we want to give you some tips on how to navigate around in such a stacked financial model, so that you can be able to move in quickly and efficiently. So, and by the way, the part of the reason as to why we want to stack models vertically is that we want every column. Let's try to zoom out a little bit. We want every column, this column, let's say column for revenue, for F, column F. We want to make sure that every column or every period is perfectly aligned. For example, this is column F, and column F has a year 2022. In other words, it's 2022 actuals that were placed in column F. So if we roll down, if you try to move down like this, you will see that, so if you try to roll down using the mouse, you can see that this is always the case. In other words, all the figures for 2022, they are stuck in that column F. They are not going anywhere. That's one of the reasons why we prefer to stack models vertically. So we always want to maintain that alignment. As you stack models vertically, you can have all those values. If they are relating to only one financial accounting period, they are all in that same column. If they are relating to 2025, they are all in that same column. So that's why we stack models vertically. But also, when you try to use the app, when you try to navigate through these models, if you try to move up and down a little bit through the model, can be in the model, and we try to move up and down a little bit. So you are seeing we can actually be able to move down and up in that large vertical stack. But we are finding it difficult for us to move because we are moving at a slow pace. Imagine moving slowly like that until you reach to the last one. Because it will be difficult for us if at all the model is going all the way to the last cells within our Excel sheet. So I'm going to give you the tips, some of the tips on how we can actually navigate through our model. Very easy. So you have to notice that right here in this column A, that column A, we have left it blank. There is nothing in that column. And we can highlight that column by hitting this. If you don't use because here I'm using the mouse to highlight. But if you want to highlight that column, you can now just put your cursor in here. You do Control Spacebar. It will highlight it. If you want to highlight any column, you just put the cursor in that column, you use Control Spacebar. But now, within this same cell, this same column A, we want to put something called a navigational column. In other words, we want to leave that column as a navigational path for us to navigate through those vertical model. So we can use now that column A like an elevator to actually move up and down into the model. So the way we are going to create this navigational column is really simple. So let's move down to this cell. Let's first get out that. Let's move down to cell A3, right besides assumptions, that assumption section. What we are going to do, we are going to put in a space in that column. So we can hit the F4 to get into that column. And now what we are going to do, we are going to put in a space. And we can only put in a space using that space button, space bar. This backspace button. We have put in that space. So we are going to go to we are going to also go to this income statement. This is F4. We do the same thing. We put in some space there. We are also going to do the same thing to these other sections, like for target EBITDA, we hit enter. And the good thing with these spaces, the good thing with these space buttons, or with those spaces that we put, these spaces, they cannot be seen. So we are going to be putting in those spaces down to all these sections. We do the same thing to common size, use the backspace, hit enter to put in a space there. Then we also go to the last one, which is the percentage change. You also come and put in backspace, enter. So, and the nice thing about these spaces that we are putting in, no one can actually see them, but they give us something that something that is going to help us get like a stopover. We stop against those different points that we have. So what we mean by those different stops or stoppages that we are going to get is that if we are down here to this percent change, if let's say maybe we move a little bit down, if we move down here to this net income, we move to this cell S76 to that income statement, and now we hold down our control, then we tap the up arrow. You find it is taking us, we are going to those last items. So you will see that we have those different stoppages. Hit the enter, come here, hit enter. Let me just put them here, enter. We go to also common size, we put in different percentage, hit enter. So now when you are from this section S76 and you hold down your control plus the alt L, you hold down control, you hold down your control, and then you hit the up arrow. You'll find yourself stopping at this point for percentage, where we put in our space. We put in that space using this big space bar. The backspace button is the one that we use. So when you hold down control, then you hit the up arrow again, you'll find yourself moving to the next item. So those are the stoppages that we are talking about until you go to the last one. So you are seeing, if you use the down arrow, shift down, sorry, control down arrow, this is we are going upwards. So I hold down the control key, hit the down arrow, and I move to the next section, to the next section, the next section, until I finish up. So now you are seeing when I hit the down arrow down here, it is taking me far away. So what do I need to do? I need to also come here, this to that net income. I also put in the space. I hit this big button, the backspace once, then I hit enter. So I'm going to be moving and I will be stopping at this net income, not moving down to the last row within the Excel. So up arrow, just like that. So now when I use the down arrow, I'm going to stop at that net. That's where I'm stopping, because that's where our schedule is ending. So that's what we wanted to put. That's a navigational column. So we've seen that we have those different stoppages as we've seen. So those stoppages are actually helping us to get all the way to the top really quickly, and we can hold down the control key and use the arrows to actually move to move out and to move up and down to those different sections as we've seen. So installing a navigational column is quick and easy, and the good thing is that it is practically invisible, because you can't see those spaces that we put there, but you can see the stoppages. So it doesn't matter where you are working in the model, it could be anywhere, and you hold down maybe your because you can be in this. Let's take an example. You are here and you want to move to your navigational column. You just hold the left key like that and you are within. So it doesn't matter where you are. Whether you are at this point, you just use the left arrow to go to that section of the navigational column. So, and when you reach the navigational column, you can just hold down the control down arrow or up arrow to be able to move within that navigational column. So it is super quick. Now, we have just gone through the navigational column and we have also discussed our preference for vertical model building. In other words, we keep stacking those different schedules or sections on top of one another. And we have also discussed the importance of aligning everything, like 2025, 2024 is always going to be aligned in that column. Let's say it is column H, let's say it is column F, but it's going to be aligned. For every financial information for a given financial year is going to be aligned in a given column. So one thing we are going to see in the next video is that perfect vertical alignment can also help you when you are auditing a model. So what we are going to look at is we are going to see how we can be able to investigate within our model, because we are going to use tracing dependence and tracing precedence to be able to carry out audit within the financial model. So that's what we are going to look at in the next video. We see you there. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now continuing with our series of Excel fundamentals, and what we are going to look at today, we are going to look at formula auditing. So we just finished discussing our preference for vertical stacking when we are building a model, and we also looked at assembling a navigational column here on the left hand side. We say this is our navigational column. When you hit the page up and page down buttons, you can be able to move through on those different sections within our financial model using that navigational column on our left hand side. What we are going to look at now is the adjustment, or is actually it's the alignment of the model. For example, right here in column H, if you try to look at this column H, you want to comment about the alignment of that model. We see that within that column H, we have only information that is relating to 2024 forecast. So we want to discuss how that alignment can actually help with model editing or auditing of the model. So we want to basically look at stacking these models vertically and making sure that each column is representing information for an individual year. We want to look at how important is that, because you look at column F, we have information for 2022, column G, we have information for 2023 throughout, and that's how the model has been aligned. So we want to take a look at how that alignment is actually going to help us in auditing our financial model. So without wasting time, let's jump in and take a look. Now, the idea here is that, as you can see, if we try to highlight this column H, if you want to highlight the column H using the keyboard, you just come in that column, you press anywhere in that column, then you hold Control spacebar, that big button, spacebar. You hold down the Control, then you hit the spacebar. That highlights any cell as long as you've selected. Now I've selected the column I. If I hold down Control, then I press the backspace button, then it will highlight the whole column. To highlight the row, we said we use Shift. We've been that cell we want to highlight. Let's assume we want to highlight this row 43, 44. We just hold down the shift key, then we hit the backspace button, or that big button. It highlights the entire column, entire row, sorry. So if we try to highlight this column H, Control spacebar highlights the entire. You can see we've highlighted the entire information from all the way from the assumptions down to the last point where we computed the percentages. We've highlighted information for 2024 in that column. So that column H has only information that is relating to 2024 forecasts. So we want to keep that consistency all the way down through the financial model. In other words, we want to be from the top to the bottom, row 1 all the way down to row 2000. In other words, when we are building these financial models, we make sure that we stack these models vertically so that we can have that kind of alignment for the information that we are doing. In other words, until we finish all the values that we have, until we finish all the cells that are in that column. So that's how we are supposed to align the information that we have there. So if you build the income statement, because you may find the model, you may find that our model, if I come here and I hit the page down, you'll see that our model is actually very short. It is ending on row 76. But you may find when the model you have is actually finishing all the rows that we have within our Excel sheet. So you may find that according to the information that we have, we've been able to build the information maybe to let's say this 2,500 in a row 2,500. So even if we build to that deep financial model, we are supposed to keep that alignment in place. And the reason is very simple. The reason as why we are trying to maintain that alignment is not because we only want the consistency, but it's because it really helps us with model auditing. I just want us to take a small example and we try to analyze to see how can that actually help us with the model, how can that actually help us with model editing. So let's try to take an example and we look at how that can actually help us in model editing. So for example, we want to take an example. We have to take a quick look at some of these things and we see how we can be able to get to these points. Let's try maybe to move a little bit up. We use the page up button. The page up button. So we are in the assumption section of the model. So if we try to go to this area right here, F8, cell F8. So we shall see that the formula right here is the one you are seeing up here is the one that we use to compute the cost of goods sold as a percentage of revenue. That's what they are telling us. Cost of goods sold as a percentage of revenue. So that's the formula that we have. But now let's pretend that we are going to audit that same formula. Because the formula is already known. Cost of goods sold is as a percentage of revenue. So Let's pretend that we want to audit that formula. We want to find out whether this person to get that answer actually went through that same formula they gave us. Now, one of the first ways that we could audit is just to move into that very cell, because we are in cell F8. So we can go in that cell by using F2 key. If you hit the F2 key once, it's going to go into that very cell. And actually we can see that these values are actually connected from this point. You can see that it is F8, F18, which is a blue item, a blue figure, meaning we are getting it from the blue box. This is a red box. So F17 is this one. That is the red box. So you are seeing where we are getting this divided by this, which exactly represents cost of goods sold as a percentage of revenue. So we can actually see that when we use the F2 key to just move into that cell, we can actually be able to audit that. And actually we can see the connections since they are close, because these connections are close from this point to this one. They are very close. But I want you to take an instance where let's say the connection from this point was beyond this area where we can see on the screen. Maybe it was in row 30 or 35. We couldn't be able to see it from this perspective. We couldn't be seeing these, because we need to see these very icons you are seeing, these very boxes you are seeing. They are the ones that are representing the formulas that are within that cell. So if those values were deeper within the schedule, we couldn't be able to use that approach to do our auditing. So, meaning we couldn't be able to see the connections. So, that kind of auditing is not always the case, because sometimes we are connecting two spots that are deeper down beyond what we can see on the screen. So if we can't see, then it means there is no way we are going to be able to follow. Because if it was down below, we couldn't jump this way and at the same time be at this point where we can see the connections. So what can really be done if that's the case? So what is going to be helpful is up here from the formula section of the ribbon. That's where we will be able to get the solution. The formula section of the ribbon, in particular, this area here that says formula auditing, this area here is the only area that is going to help us to carry out the formula auditing. So we can now just hit enter for a moment here, so that you can actually see this area right here. We can maybe take screenshot. We use print screen. We take a screenshot of this area. So this is the area we are talking about. This is the area that we are actually focusing on. You can paste it here so that everyone can be able to see these values that we are talking about. So it has been pasted here. This is the section that is going to help us carry out those auditing within our model. So that's the area that's going to help us to actually have that formula audited. So it is from the formula section of the ribbon. So we can delete this. So it is this area that is going to help us with that kind of auditing. So what we are going to make use of is the idea of tracing precedence and tracing dependence. In other words, the two things that we are going to use, they are these two icons here: trace precedence or trace dependency. Dependence. Those are the areas that we are going to use if we are doing formula auditing. And what we are going to do is we are going to remove those arrows once we are done with a particular check. Because now if you go to these trace precedents, it gives these arrows, these blue arrows, we are seeing them. So if you go to trace dependence, you will see that these arrows, they actually come up. So what we are going to do, we are going to make sure that we get those arrows there, but at the same time, we make sure that we remove those at the end of the day. After seeing or after doing the auditing, we remove them. So maybe to get a difference, we are going to get the difference after looking at an example or after getting a demonstration of how this works. So let's try to have a try on those two. So let's go back in this cell F8. That cell F8 right there, what we want to do, we want to do trace precedence. In other words, we are going to do what we call formula auditing. And we are going, the tool we are going to use is trace precedence. So I just want us to first see what happens, then we can be able to elaborate on such items. But remember here, we are not going to use the mouse. We are going to use the keyboard because that's my emphasis. Or that's what I basically want someone to pick. Because using the mouse, that's something you've been using. But you just want to see how we can be able to use the keyboard. So we go to Alt. You first have to select the area that you want to trace its precedence. So we've selected cell F8. So we go to Alt, then we go to M for formulas. And now what you are going to do, we are going to see from this point that trace precedence here is actually having letter P. So we come and hit P. And that P is actually for tracing precedence. And as soon as you tap the Alt M plus P, it shows you all the cells which are leading into that very cell that you've highlighted. This is how it looks like. You are seeing from this point here, it has given you these two dots, the first dot and even the second dot. And you are seeing the arrow is moving upwards, meaning from this cell F8, there are two items that are connected to that cell. It is the revenue in F17 and the cost of goods in F18. So those are the only items that are connected to that cell. So that's one way we can be able to test. So after seeing that these two cells, they're actually connected, because the other one is saying cost of goods sold as a percentage of revenue. As long as you see that these answers are coming from revenue and at the same time the cost of goods, then the next thing to do is to come here in that very cell. You get to know, did they do the right math? In other words, if it is as a percentage, you go and do your proofing. How do we proof? You get this, because if cost of goods sold is as a percentage of revenue, you just get this 45% times the revenue. Are we going to get this answer? If you're not getting the answer, then it means they have done a mistake. The other thing is, you get this answer, you divide by this one to be able to have this 45%. You can do it using a calculator, then to find out whether these guys they actually did the same thing. But this trace precedence is going to help you show which cells are connected to that particular cell that you are auditing. So that's what we do for trace precedence. So trace precedence helps us to give us direction, and we are seeing the direction of the arrow. They are going from those little dots that we saw down there to where the arrow is directing. So everything that is leading into that cell is represented by dots. Then those dots are actually having a straight line leading to that particular cell that we've been investigating. So this is really helpful, and what we want to look for obviously is a perfect vertical alignment. The other thing that we need to note is, from this perspective, is that we are not going to have a horizontal line. It's always going to be a vertical line. If you find the line is changing, yet you are checking from the same column, then you just know you've done a mistake, because there is no way it can be when these values, they are not coming. You are getting a value within the same cell, but it's coming from different cells. So since we are doing financial modeling, all the models are supposed to be stuck together vertically. That's the preferred approach, because it gives you this kind of auditing, or it allows you to do this kind of auditing. So that vertical alignment is actually shown by that blue line. That blue line with an arrow that is completely vertical. So now, if you are happy that we've done some check, so we can go up here and remove the arrows. We can go the same where we went to put those arrows, is the same way we remove those arrows. So, but here we are not going to use the keyboard. We prefer to use the keyboard. Again, you can use the mouse, but I recommend that you will stick to the keyboard. So we shall go through the same procedure. Alt, we go to Alt, M for formulas. Then we are going to go, you see here, down here, they say remove arrows. We have A. So when you press A, it says remove precedent arrow, that is P, remove dependency arrows. But here what we want to remove, arrows. So we hit A again. So that's how we remove those arrows. So you've seen it has actually removed itself very fast. So it is actually a very easy example for us to be able to demonstrate that trace precedence. But as I said, by just tapping the F2 key, we could also see everything like the way you are seeing it from here. You be in that cell, you hit the F2 key. The only challenge is that we are not going to have those arrows, but at least we can be able to see those values since they are within that line of sight for our screen. But now, let's look at a different example, which is a little bit more complex. Now, let's try to use the page down and the page down and the page down and page up, because here we are already up. We can't use the page up. Let's use the page down button to move a little bit far from the first screen. We can now maybe try to go to this side of the common size statement, income statement. So we want to do some investigations within the common size income statement. In fact, let's look at one of the examples down below. Let's pretend that we are trying to audit this SG&A, the whole of this line. Maybe let's just say we are auditing the SG&A. And what we want to do in this common size statement, we can go maybe to cell, specifically we go to cell F. Let's just use cell F because let's just use column F because we've been in that column for a while. Let's go to cell F49 and we tap the F2 key. That F2 key says these values were gotten from F21 divided by F17. None of these values are here. All of them are within the upper section of our model. But we can see actually these references, they are off our screen and they are above in other areas, which we can't actually see on our screen at this moment. So this is a very great example where we could use the trace precedence. So, for example, in this case, let's try to move within the cell. Let's hit the enter, and now let's be in that very cell, F49. And what we are going to do, we are going to trace precedence. So what we are going to go to Alt, M for formulas, and now we are going to P for tracing precedence. You are seeing the value here that this arrow is facing downwards, meaning the values that are connecting to this cell, they are upwards. So we can now move. You can use the page up and page down, or you can scroll just like this. You are seeing we picked this value from here and this value, but they are going all the way down to F49, meaning, because remember this common size income statement, as you remember when we were developing this model, we copied that information from our income statement. That's why we are seeing those values. The values we used as inputs were from the income statement. So that's why you can see that we have actually, so you can see that we have so many things that we can actually look at. So let's try to use, maybe let's highlight that cell by using Control spacebar, and we try maybe to move a little bit. We want to see, because we are basically looking at that vertical alignment within that blue arrow. So what we are looking for here, if you go and you don't see that vertical alignment, you see when you're moving in that highlighted section of that F column, we are seeing that everything is in straight line, meaning it is a vertical alignment. So what will be the red flag, or what will show us that we've done a mistake? So what we are looking for as a flag would be potentially a diagonal blue arrow, indicating that the person had attached to the wrong period. If you see that the line is there, but it is attaching other values, then you just know that you've done a mistake somewhere. So that diagonal blue arrow will actually indicate that someone has done. It will be a red flag for us to know that there is actually a mistake. So there is no need for you to, you just pick only one figure and you start doing the auditing on that very same value. So we have gone ahead and checked the alignment of the arrow first. Now, we want now to quickly use the page up, and page down buttons. Of course, those ones we can keep them. We can use them as we page up, then page down. We'll be moving downwards and backwards as we're moving through the model. So what we are going to do, so we've now done the auditing of that. So we are now going to remove the arrows. Now, remember, I want to go to this point here for removing arrows here, but we want to use the keyboard because we don't want to do anything. We use the same shortcut, Alt M for formulas and A to remove arrows, then A, and the moment you press the last A, you will see that even the arrow has actually disappeared. So that's what we basically wanted to look at from that perspective. So since the arrows are now gone, so I hope you can be able to appreciate just how helpful this section can be here for auditing. Now, we want to demonstrate trace dependency because we have now finished tracing precedence. Because also tracing dependence can also be helpful as well. For example, if you are in this cell here, let's assume you are in this cell. Let's use the page up button to move a little bit up. Let's assume that you are in this cell here. Let's just go with these ones that are highlighted. L35, cell L35, and say you want to trace dependency. So you go to Alt, M for formulas. Then instead of going for P, we are now going for D, dependency, because that is the D. Trace dependency has a letter D, so we go for D. Now, that's the very big difference that we have. They are all using arrows, but the arrows are moving in different directions. This is what we want to understand. So, as we can see now, the dependency over this cell right here, D38, this cell here, D38, there is this 38 depends on this. That's why you are seeing that arrow is crossing over that in that format, because this is the EBITDA in 2028, and that is the 2028 that we are talking about. So there is that leakage. In other words, this one is linked to this. That's the implication. That's why you are seeing the arrow is moving from this point and it is facing this side, meaning this arrow is depending on this. If this one changes, this one is also going to change. That's the dependency that we are talking about. So now what we want to do next is maybe to try and remove these arrows, because we've seen the arrows. We use the same thing, Alt, then we go to M for formulas, A to remove arrows, and A to remove arrows. And at the moment you press that last A, you'll find that the arrows are now removed. So now we want to explore. Maybe we'll try to explore with the mouse. If you try to move around with the mouse, so let's try to first go exploring this side with the mouse. You see, when you read through that trace precedent, that dialog box that appears, immediately, if you don't click, but you just put the mouse cursor there. If you read it through, the trace precedence show arrows that indicate which cells affect values of currently selected cell. In other words, they are continuing to say, use Control plus left square bracket to navigate to precedence of the selected cell. Then let's just go down here to trace dependence. Trace dependence show arrows that indicate which cells that affected by the value of the currently selected cell. And they are continuing to say, use Control plus left square bracket to navigate to dependence of the selected cells. Let's try to understand Control plus left square bracket. Left square bracket is actually that there is a slash, a backslash. It's actually it looks like a forward slash. It is above the enter key. It's a box, as you can see it. It is square bracket. In other words, it has two corners. So if you use the Control plus either left or right square brackets, what will happen? Those are the things that maybe we are going to actually focus on, because we've seen that there are those shortcuts. For example, under the trace precedence, we can see that there is a shortcut here, Control plus left square bracket, and that helps you to navigate to two cells, precedent cells. And then up here for dependence, we can use the Control plus right square bracket to navigate to the dependencies of selected cells. So let's try those two and we'll see what happens. So if we try those shortcuts starting from down here in this cell, maybe we can just go to this cell. Let's just move down a bit. Use page down. Use page down. Maybe we start from here. The one we've been talking about. That D38. When we are in that D38, so what are we going to do? Let's use Control left square bracket and we see what happens. We've seen, I'll put here the cursor. When I hit Control left square bracket, the cursor, this one, moves to that corresponding cell. Remember, the figure that was in here is the figure that goes here. If this figure changes, even this one has to change. So when I put the cursor here and I hit Control left square bracket, it is going to take me to that corresponding item, Control left square bracket. Now you see the cursor is moving very fast. So it goes up to the precedent cell. And then to go to the dependent cell, now we have to hit the right square bracket. Now, if you want to move from this, remember, when I put here, this is a precedent because the value here comes from this one. So now if I put the cursor here and I use Control right square bracket, it takes me to this side. It means that the value here, in other words, what is reflecting in this box here is actually affecting what is here. So that's the analysis I wanted us to have. So that movement you've just seen, the last movement of moving from this point here using Control right square bracket, of moving to this side of cell D38, we can see that that is the dependent cell. So what we are going to do now, let's jump over to the next video and we are going to show you how we can actually put in some another formatting features that you can add to this financial model to make it even more professional and easy to navigate. We want it to look, this model to look a bit more professional and easy for the users to actually navigate through. So what are we going to do in the next video? We are going to do what we call row grouping. In other words, we are going to have there are some icons that are going to come in this very side, in this navigational column, that are going to help us. Actually, they are not coming from this navigational column, they come this side. So let's see you in the next video as we do those items. Because you are seeing, from that perspective, we are going to be seeing that moving from this point using this up and down arrow, it is a little bit tricky. So in other words, what we are going to be doing, we are going to collapse these values, but we put something that we call, like, looks like a drop down, that if I click on this one, I can collapse this, I can collapse this, but when I click on that, I can actually open it wide. So that's what we are going to be doing. So we see you in the next video as we are looking at row grouping. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now looking at row grouping. So in this video, we want to discuss grouping, and in particular, row grouping. This can really help to add another professional element to our formattings, but it can also help to make your model more easy to navigate for your audience. So let's jump in and take a look at how that can be done. So now, we definitely want to do this with the keyboard. So let's go up here into this data section of the ribbon. This is where we do the row grouping using the data section of the ribbon. We are going to explore with the mouse to learn some of the keyboard shortcuts that we can actually use. So let's move all the way here to data section of the ribbon. Go to data section of the ribbon, and now we are within the data section of the ribbon. So we want to see from this section here, we can see group and group. There are so many things that we can see from this outline section or outline tab of the data section of the ribbon. So we can see that all the way here we have those values. If we try to click in here, or if we try to put in the mouse, we can actually see how certain things are going to look like. So from here we can see the grouping, how things are done, and we can also see the keyboard shortcut, because this is basically what we came to first navigate, or we first explore with the mouse. The shortcut for grouping is Shift plus Alt plus right arrow. That's for grouping. So we have seen the shortcut for grouping. And now over here, if we try to put our cursor on that ungroup icon, we can see that the keyboard shortcut for it is Shift plus Alt plus left arrow. That's to ungroup. So those are the things we want to give a try and see what will happen. So we are going to apply grouping to this assumption section here. The assumption section. So we want now to start from here, because this section is the one that we want to have something that is that's where I want to group. So if we are grouping this one is within row 3. So if you are grouping this, you can't start grouping in that same section again, because it will be like you want this section to appear. So if we are grouping from this row, what we do, we normally skip one line. We skip that very line, and then we put our cursor in the next line. So we are going to put our cursor in this row 4. That's where we are going to put our cursor before we go to the use of those, because we are going to mainly use the keyboard shortcut. We are not going to use the mouse. So we start from that point here in row 4, because remember we are taking section per section. In other words, the whole of this information, we need it that is within this section. The whole of this from this point up to here, we need all that information. Actually, we need it up to this point, this last one line. That's why here you see when we started our model, we skipped 2 lines. We skipped this, and at the same time we skipped that one. So we skipped, there are 2 lines. That was the reason. The reason is to keep one line. Even here we are leaving one line just to separate things, to be a little bit professional. So let's now start from this line here. That's the row that we are going to focus on. So what we are going to do, we are going to start in that row 4, and we are going to hold down the shift key. We go all the way to row 13. You can use the shift key. We hold down the shift key, we move like this up to row 13 there. That's where we want to be. So what we are going to do, we are not going to include row 14, because we want to skip at least one line. We start from row 4 to row 13. So we know the things that we are going to use. We hold down the shift key, then we also tap the alt key, and then we use the right arrow. We've used the right arrow. Now you are seeing there is that a small key that comes. Remember, I've just highlighted only this column. So it is asking, are we grouping the rows or we are grouping the columns? Remember, we are taking the columns. Otherwise, we would have highlighted everything. So we come here and take rows around. So we can maybe undo that. Instead of highlighting only that point, because others, you may not be asked that question and you start wondering. If you just use, maybe you just take these values, you hold down your shift key, you go up to 13, then you move down, move this side. We can stop at that point. Then you use shift alt right arrow. It will be the same thing. Here we are not taking columns, we are taking rows, because these are the rows. Because we want our grouping to appear this side, not this side. You hit OK, you will see that it has come. This is what we are talking about. So you are seeing here, I've collapsed it. I've collapsed the assumption. I can only see the heading assumption, but I can't see what is in the assumption until I come here and collapse this area there. So that's the kind of grouping that we are talking about. So we can do the same for all the sections that we have. So now we have the grouping in place. And we've said it's going to be on our left-hand side. This side, not within the navigation column, is supposed to be outside. Just like the way you are seeing, it has appeared here. This is a simple illustration of how it was going to appear. It is the same way it is appearing the other side. So we can also do the same for the rest of the other items, and we can also see what we have to do. So let's also continue down to the income statement. We are going to start from this income statement. Let's go slowly. From the income statement here, we are going to start highlighting from this point here, row 16. We've skipped this very line because the row that we are highlighting that has income statement is that. So we are moving one step and we go to that point. So we highlight shift, we hold down the shift key. Actually, you can come and say Control Shift down arrow, but that will take you too far because we'll not be having a stoppage. So what we are going to use, the shift key, hold down the shift key, then you use the down arrow to move slowly. So we are taking everything that we have up to that point there, up to row 30. We are highlighting everything up to row 30. We can hold down the shift key, then we move slowly like this to show what we are doing. So the whole of that information, we are taking it. Just remember that here we've left one line, and even this side we have left one line. That is spacing. It keeps our work to be a little bit more professional. So instead of going through the other shortcuts that we used, you can just hit the F4 key. And your F4 key will do exactly the same thing. But since we are learning, let's hold down the shift key, Alt, then right arrow. Then you can go to OK or Enter. And we are seeing it has come even down here. We do the same thing. We are going to probably do the same thing for the rest of the things that we want also to put in a group. So here you can use the down arrow, then you to move around. Here, target IBEDA. This is the target IBEDA, the section. So we skip that line and we break off that one. So what we are going to do, we are going to highlight also that section there. We highlight from row 33 and we move all the way down. Let's use the down arrow, the shift key, hold down the shift key, use the down arrow, we move downwards to row 39. Then we can hold down the shift key, we use the right arrow to highlight across to that point. So that's the point where we are going to break, or where we are going to put the group. So what we are going to do now, we are going to go through the same procedure. Others, you can just hit your F4 key. If it's not working, then you go to the shortcuts. Shift, Alt, right arrow, Enter. And we are done with that section. We go to common sized statement. It is within this row 41, but we are going to start from row 42. So we start from row 42, we use the shift, we hold down the shift key, we highlight downwards until we finish these items. They are now done to row 58. Then you can, even if you don't highlight across, but if you want, you can highlight across, shift key, highlight across, but even if you don't do it, it still comes as long as you have highlighted the other starting point. So we can now go through the same Shift, Alt, right arrow, enter. And we have also put that in place. You can keep on collapsing these values. As we finish, you collapse. As we finish, you collapse. But for now, let's not collapse them. You can use the page down and you move around. So let's go to the percent section. Let's now go to the percent section. So I think this is the percent change. This is the final schedule, I think. Yeah, it is the final schedule that we have. Finally, this is what we are left with. So we have also to slide down a little bit to have this into focus. Just like that. We can also try to, so we have the percent change. And now what we are going to do, we are going to highlight from this cell here, from this row. We are working on that percent change. So we start from, we skip that line, then we start on the next one, row 61. We highlight downwards using the shift key. Shift, hold down the shift key, then you use the down arrow to highlight downwards until you finish all the values. We go up to row 77. We can go up to row 77, but since it is not reaching there, we can stop at row 76 because the other figures, they are all done. So we stopped at that same. We do the same, Shift, Alt, right arrow, OK. And now we have that in place. So we've put in those row groupings. There is also column grouping, but that's not what we are going to talk about for now. But I just want you to know that it's also there. So we have the row grouping in place now. Now, a lot of people expand some of these groupings with the mouse, just like the way by doing this, like collapsing them. I'm collapsing them using the mouse. Even this one, I can collapse it using the mouse. Even this, I collapse it with the mouse. Even that, I collapse it with the mouse. I go to the last one, I also collapse it with the mouse. So these are the things that we did. So that's how we collapsed the things, and that's how we put them together. So you can see now they are looking a little bit like a table of content. They are more organized. So I was saying that a lot of people expand these groupings using the mouse just by clicking on that plus sign or this minus sign to collapse. But now what we are going to do, we are going to focus on the use of the keyboard. We are going to see how we can collapse them using the keyboard. In other words, we do those movements using the keyboard. But now let's first try to do some experiment with the mouse for now. So over here, we are going to click on this area here on the left, because we are using this left hand side. Maybe we'll try to zoom in a little bit, Control Alt. We zoom in a little bit to have some of the things in focus. So we've zoomed in a bit. So what we are going to do, you can just go to this plus sign, you click it once, and you see that it has collapsed. You click it, you click that minus, it groups it again. So the minus is going to collapse, is going to group. If you hit this plus sign, it's going to collapse the grouping. If you hit the minus symbol, it's going to group those values. So Clicking a plus sign will expand. It will expand that section. So when you hit this plus sign, it expands that area, and the minus collapses that same expanded area, or it groups it. So when you hit this plus sign, you can be able to navigate through these different regions as you can do with the mouse. But now the other way that we can navigate these grouping levels is over here on the top left corner. Let's first collapse this. On this side, you can, this is the top left corner that we are talking about. This one. This is level 1. If you hit here, it will take you to level 2. It will collapse that. So we are on 1. So if you go to level 2, it will now start collapsing those values. So that's the other way is on that top left corner. This one is representing level 1. This 2 is representing level 2. So on level 2 here, if you click on this, one, once it will opens up, or it will expand that level, the first level. It will expand. But if you go to 1, it will collapse. In other words, this one will expand and this one will collapse that section. So that's the second way we can actually navigate through those different sections that we have there. Now, the real advantage of a structure like this one, because you are seeing this item, they are now organized like they are in data tables or table of contents. The real advantage of this structure, so as you can see, this one is acting a little bit nicer, because just imagine by hitting on this one, you find yourself expanding the whole of the sections that you are looking at, and you have a view of the information that is within those areas. So it looks nice, and it looks like a table of contents for our model. So it makes us be able to see all the sections that are within our financial model. Now we can know that the audience is going to acknowledge that we are having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections that we are going to look at. So if there were 10, they can even know the time they are going to consume when they are going through that same section. So it really acts as a table of content for our financial model. And it's also very good for us to use to make sure that we have clean and professional work. Also remember that in column A, this column A here, that column A, as you can see, we put in some navigational stops. Remember, on each section we have those navigational stops. So if you use control down arrow, you are seeing you are stopping on that section. Down arrow again, you are stopping on that section. Down arrow, same section. Down arrow, same section. So you are seeing it is really moving on well for us. In this same arrow, we put in those sections. If you come here, you hit control down arrow, you will move to that. Down arrow again, down arrow, down arrow, down arrow. It is within that navigational column. That's why we leave that column A blank, because we want to use it as a navigational path. So it is really simple and easy to use. Now, a lot of people activate these grouping handles over here using the mouse. Because it is very easy for you to click on this, and you'll be able to open some of these things very fast. But now we want to see, if we don't use the keyboard, we don't use the mouse, which shortcuts are we going to be able to use for us to navigate through those different sections that we have there? So there are so many sections that we have. So if you try maybe to go to this section here, you will also be able to see other details as you can see them. Those are directions for different things that you can actually go through and be able to navigate through. So we want to use some of those shortcuts that are going to actually help us to navigate through these different sections. Because you see, from this point even here, there is this plus. If you go to this section here for group, this is group, but on your left here, there is show details. So this very section here, we can also use them and they'll be able to guide us and give us directions. So let's try to have some of those things and we see what we can do. So what we are going to do down here with the keyboard, we are going to hold down the shift key. We hold down the shift key. And now what we are going to do, we are going to highlight from this row 3. We want to see these values that are within here. So we highlight from row 3, we highlight all these values up to row 14. You put your cursor there, then you hold down the shift key. You highlight up to row 14. There. Remember, this is row 3, this is row 13, row 14, meaning other rows, they are within that very same cell itself. So that means by selecting row 3 to row 14, it means it's like we are now selecting across that grouping. In other words, we are accessing all the things that are within that section for assumptions. You hold down the shift key, then you highlight up to that section where it ends. That's why we've been able to put in those spaces as you can see them. Now, we are going to tap the Alt key. When you tap the Alt key, we are going to go for A for data. You are seeing data as has A. So we go for data. And now, what we are going to do, we are going to go over here. Here, this section here, the one we've been talking about, J. And that J is going to show details. You hit J, and it's going to open for you everything that is within that cell. So we've seen that it has expanded that selection right there, and we can actually see. Now everything is still selected as we did, because we have everything in there for assumption and selected. So since everything is still selected as it opened itself, what we are going to do, we are going now to collapse it. How are we going to collapse? We go to Alt, A for data, and now we are going to this section here, this one, to ungroup, that is H. H, if you go there, it says hide details. So we hit H, and now it has collapsed back the things that we had selected. Now, if you want to expand more sections, because you may want to expand more sections from this point, here we've selected only one. But now if you want to select multiple sections of the model and you want to see all of them at once, and it is something that we are going to be doing all the time. So what we are going to do, maybe let's try to highlight row 3, and we are going to use the shift key. We select or we highlight all the way down to A78. So we are going to highlight again. We go to this, we hold down the shift key, hold the shift key, then use the down arrow to move all the way to this section, that one. Then you can, if you want, you can also proceed, but even there is enough. So what we are going to do now, we go to the same shortcut, Alt A for data, and then J to show details. You've seen it has opened everything that we did. It has expanded all these sections and it has opened them completely. Now, let's collapse those same sections at once. Since they are still selected, what we are going to do, we are now going to use, since they are still selected, because they are still selected all the way down. If they are unselected, then you could just use, you could select that section. They are still selected. Since they are still selected, we go to the same thing, Alt A for data, and then H to hide or to collapse those sections. And now it has done it. It has collapsed. We've collapsed all the sections. So that's the reason as why we always recommend a vertical model building, so that we can easily stack schedules on top of one another, and we can have connection that are all the way within the same tabs in the file. So that makes things really simple for other people to actually understand. And the other thing, to make those models stack vertically, it makes it easy to navigate. So one of the things that we are going to install is we will be able to install the navigational column, because that's the only thing that makes the navigation be easy. We do the navigation on the left hand side, and we put in some row groupings in place so that people can effectively have a nice table of contents, as you can see, and everything is just displayed in the model, and we can actually navigate through quickly. So with that done, what we are going to do, we are just going to jump to the next video, and we are going to look at some things that we can do to make the model easy to print or to save in a PDF format. So we are going to look at the next video, and it's going to be print setting. So we'll see you there as we are talking about how you can actually save your document as a PDF, how you can actually print it out in a more professional way. So let's look at the print setup. We see the more still recommendable print settings that you can actually have in these financial models. We'll see you there. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now looking at the print settings, and in this video we are going to look at how we can configure the printer settings, which is really critical to make sure that you can export your model into a PDF format or print it for somebody who wants to review the model. So let's take a look. Now, first of all, if we explore with the mouse, let's try to open this model, and then we try to explore with our mouse. So let's try to explore with our mouse. Let's zoom it out to 100%. So we can now see from this perspective that if we zoomed in to be able to have a full view of whatever we have. So we are going to use the mouse and move over to the view section of the ribbon. So we go to the view section of the ribbon. That's where we are. Here we can see that we are in the normal view from this point, the workbook views. Here we are in the normal view. We can also see it is highlighted. So we are in the normal view of the module. So we may need to know how to use the keyboard to get a page break or back to even the normal view. So here we have the normal, we have the page break view, we have page layout, we have even the custom view. But now we've moved to this point when we are using the mouse. But we need also to know how we can actually access those points, those view positions, as we are using the keyboard shortcut. So let's try to give it a try. So what we are going to do, we are going to tap the Alt key. Alt, we don't highlight anywhere. You you hit the Alt key, and then up here you will see that view has W. So you go to W for view, and now we can see that I, from this point here, I is for page break. So we can now try to hit that I for a page break view. So that's a page break view. And as we go to the page break view, or the page break preview of this file, we are seeing that it's normal for Excel to zoom out a little bit to give something. In other words, let's try to zoom out. Control Alt equals sign, and now we are trying to zoom in a little bit. In other words, it's also very fine for Excel as a software to actually give you a summary or a preview of what you've been preparing all along. That's why we have that page break view. In other words, Excel tries to give you a breakdown, tries to give you analysis of the things you were doing all along. So what we are seeing now here is effectively a print setup. This is a print setup which hasn't been set yet. It's the default setup that is within the Excel. So that default set or the default print view that we are seeing is what has been there, but we need also to set ours. Remember, there are some figures, you see some of the figures are crossed, some of them have been cut like here. So this is the default view of what we've been doing. So it has even indicated pages and all that. So it has just picked out the information that we already know or that we've been working on. But it is a default setup, so we need to set our own view, and we make sure that at least we have something good. So we can get out of this. To get out using the keyboard, it is we go Alt, W for view, and then we are going to go to L here for normal view, L. And now we are back in the normal view. So you probably remember from our tour of the Excel ribbon that we have this section here for page layout. Page layout, this one. That is the section we spoke about it when we went through the tour of the Excel ribbon. And right here, we can do what we call the page setting. If you click on that page layout, you'll find that from this point here, this is the page setup section. The whole of this is a page setup section. So from that point, we can actually make sure that at least we set up the layout of our page. Now, instead of using these buttons here, so instead of using these buttons you are seeing here, or these icons that you are seeing here, we can come to this down arrow here, this one. That little button down here in this right corner, bottom right corner, is the one that takes us to the page setup dialog box. So it is the page setup dialog box. And if we are using the keyboard, so we've been exploring that using the mouse, but now let's try to explore it using the keyboard. If you're using the keyboard, you come here and hit Alt key. And now here we are going to go P for page layout. And down here, we are going to go to SP. You're seeing here, this dialog box comes with those letters, SP. So that SP is taking us to the page setup. SP is for page setup. And what we are going to do inside here, or what we are going to work on inside this dialog box, we have so many things here that we can work on. And it is in this area where we are going to add just everything that we need to have as our print setups. Now that we are in this dialog box, it may be a little bit easier to use the mouse, because using the mouse in here will be a bit okay. It will save time. So the first thing that we can do is we can normally go to this orientation from this point here, and we change the orientation, because normally we always print financial models in a landscape format. We don't print them in a portrait. We print them in a landscape format. So it is the first thing that we can actually change. So we click right here, landscape. Now, after changing that to landscape, what we are going to do, we are going to go over here and look at this margins tab. For margins tab, we are now going to find the margins. We are finding that these margins, they look a little bit larger than what we actually need. Here you are seeing on top 1.9, 1.8, 1.8, 1.9. So we are seeing they're a bit larger than what we need. And what we want to be able to use for our models, if we try to use these ones, the model will not actually fit on our paper. So what we need to do, we want to be able to have these values fit onto a page. Because if you go by these measurements, 1.8 or centimeters, whatever, remember we are changing the format from portrait to landscape. So our model will not be able to fit on that paper. So from here, we can now use the tab key to navigate in those areas. We can now use the tab key to navigate into those areas, and we try to create our own measurements. So on top here, the top margin, we are going to set it to 0.3. Let's just use 0.3. And we go to the bottom. We do the same, even for the right and left sides. We are also going to set everything to 0.3. So we use the tab key, 0.3. We hit the tab key again. We go to the left, 0.3. Even tab key to the right, 0.3. So we've now adjusted those values to whatever we wanted. Now, what we want also to do, we want to come to this one. This one says center on page. What we want also to have, we want to center everything horizontally on the page. We don't want them vertically. So we center everything horizontally on the page. So now, let's leave these settings for now. So we want to just leave them like the way they are, because we haven't done setting up these things as we wanted to do. So we can try to leave this for now. We can hit OK, then we leave it for now. Now what we are going to do, we are going to try to maybe zoom in a little bit to have this in focus. Control Alt minus, at least to have everything. Has gone too far, maybe there. We try to zoom out a little bit, Control Alt equal sign, to have this in focus. Hope that will work. That will be a little bit fine for us. So, because what we basically want to do, we want to basically at least try our best to have these 3 sections onto our first page. Yeah, let's just leave it there, because I want us to be seeing the assumptions, income statement, then the target EBIT. At least we'll be seeing them, so we can now see the things that we have. Remember, the other ones we had set them, but we never wanted to set them. We just hit OK to just leave them. Maybe we can just do. So we can try now to set the page. We are going to do our own settings. So we want those 3 sections: assumptions, income statement, then the target EBITDA, they be on one page. That is our first page of the model. And by default, Microsoft has actually selected everything. But for us, we only want those first 3 sections to be at least on one page. So what we are going to do, in fact, it is really tricky to get, it's tricky to getting the getting models to print when you have selected, maybe when you are selecting each page individually. So it is really tricky. That's why we want to do some settings. We first do it as ourselves, then we can organize and print it at once. But at least let's try to have these 3 sections to be on one page. Because for the, if you just print it out, even if you just set, it will not tell that we want only these 2 topics to be on, all these 2 sections to be on our first page, but it's us to create it, and we say that we want maybe each page to be having at least 2 sections or 3 sections, but the first one at least should be having 3 sections. So that's what we are up to. So what we are going to do, we are going to try and see what we can do, and actually we have that in place by having the 3 sections on one page. So watch closely. So what we are going to do, let's first tap Alt key, and now we go for P for page out. Then we can now go right here, SP for page setup, to get into that dialog box. Now what we are going to use, we are going to use the right arrow. We are going to use the right arrow to go all the way down to this side here, sheet, that section here, that tab for sheet. So from here we are going to hit the tab key to navigate into that print area. So when you hit the tab key, now what we are going to do, we are going to type in something, because we hit the tab key just to go into that dialog box that we have there. And that dialog box is actually going to allow us to define the print area for each page. So we are going to use the arrows now to select from this cell. We are going to use the arrows to select from these cells. So we are going to use the arrows to select from the assumptions, from these sections that we have. Maybe the different cells that are within these assumptions, income statement, and then a target EBITDA. So when we select those different cells, or when we select a cell from those different sections, we are going to use the shift key, and then we can now, so we can try to set this up. So we are now moving. We are using the arrows. Remember, we are taking from these assumptions. So that arrow has moved up to B3. That is the cell. So we move to that cell B3. We have moved. And now we are going now to use the shift key. We hold down the shift key and we get all the way down to row 39. Row 39, we are just moving. Row 39, yeah. We are now in that row 39, because that's where those 3 sections are ending. So we've picked those 2 values. We've picked B3, then B39. So now what we are going to do, we still hold down the shift key. We are going to highlight across, because we are selecting everything. We are taking everything up to that point. We have selected everything from there. So now we've defined that is our first page. But now the challenge, this one is a bit tricky, because we've selected that is going to be on our first page, but we need to select the rest of the other pages. So what we are going to do, we are going to use a comma. We put in a comma as our separator. So we are going now to go back and use arrows again to make sure that we highlight the other areas. So we put in a comma and we use arrows again to go down to these other areas, because we are going to select other areas, and we select what is going to come to page 2. Remember what we are selecting, it is going to page 2. So the question is, it's going to start from which one now? Let's try to use the arrows. It is going to start from common size income statement, or the common size. So we go into that cell. We have to use the arrows to make sure that we navigate to those areas. It is back. We can now move using this. Now we are moving down to common size. We are using the down arrow. Common size is there. So I've picked that common size is B41. So what I'm going to do, that's where the page 2 is going to start from. So it's going to start from common size right there. So now what I'm going to do, we are going to go all the way across that section. We are going to pick across, then we pick downwards. So let's use the shift key. We hold down the shift key to highlight. Remember, we are stopping on L. That is J, that is K, L. So we've stopped on L. So we move all the way down, and we include even the income, the income state, the income, this net income. But we have also to add one extra line at the bottom there. We've added the bottom, the other item is stopping on the net income is in cell in row 57, but I'm going to add in one extra line or one extra row, which goes to 58, just like that. So after doing that, then we are going to hit enter. After hitting enter, let's go back up on the top here, on the top of the model. And what we are going to do, let's go back on top. And what we are going to do, we are going to go back to the view section or the view menu. So we use Alt W for view, and then I to do a print, to have a page break. Let me hope I highlighted everything. No, I forgot these other values. We were supposed to go up to sorry. We're supposed to go up to this point, because this one was also supposed to be, we are supposed to go to this last bit. I only highlighted the other aspect, but at least you've gotten the picture. Let's just go back. Let's go back and we repeat the thing, because I know it is a bit challenging, but it's something that is very good for us to actually pick right. Sorry, we've done a mistake. We did not highlight the other percentage section. We left it out. So we go back to normal with Alt W for view, then L to normal. But what we would do, we would just go undo everything. I hope this is where we've been. Let's undo again. Yeah, it's supposed to be in that section. Now here we've not selected anything. No, this one is still selected. We do undo. We don't want to have any selection because we didn't take the other part. This one still has the selection here. So now the selection, I think it is gone. This one is not included. It's not included, but we can repeat. We can repeat this. So let's go back here. We are going to do these selections again. So we are going to go back to these sections. So we said we wanted these two. Let's first zoom in a little bit. We want to be seeing all, for sure, we would have been seeing these things if we had zoomed. We want to see the whole of this on that same page. So even this one, the down part here, this one is supposed to be with this one. So that's basically what we are supposed to do. But we had selected only one piece. This one is already selected. So let's try to go back. We shall remove everything from that point. So we go to Alt. Now we are going for P for page layout. Then we go to SP for page setup. Then we are going to use the right arrow to move all the way to sheet. So these ones, let's delete everything from here. We've deleted everything from that point. So we are going to repeat these things. So we said what we are going to do. I said the thing is a bit tricky, so we need to be following. And it's a nice idea that we are repeating it because I know some of you guys might have gotten lost, but at least we are in the same dialog box where we are starting. Now we are starting off. We are now in the sheet. So what we do, we use the tab key. Already we use the tab key, and now we are already in. We use the tab key, and now we are in that print area. So we are now defining. From here, we use the arrows to move all the way to, we need to move all the way to these areas for, but it's a bit, we can't see. Let me try to zoom out a little bit. I think there we can be able to see. Yes. Yeah, we can see from here. So we go to Alt, P for page. We go to Alt, P for page layout, SP for page setup. Then we can use the right arrow to move to sheet. Then we go to tab key. We remove those things there. And now we are going to start from here. We are moving all the way to, we are now moving. We are moving up to B. Let's move. We are moving up to that cell, B3. So when you tap in that B3, what you are going to do, you hold down the shift key and you start highlighting downwards up to row 39, because that's where our 3 sections are ending. So you don't leave the shift key. You still hold it and use the right arrow to take you to this section there. L39, that's where our shade ends. So from here, it is a bit tricky, so we need to use a comma to separate those two rows. After separating, then we need to define the other items that are going to start on the second section. So we use the arrows again Now, if you hit any arrow, it is now a Q10. So we need to move up to B. So we move. Now we are moving backwards. It's now in B, B10. So we move downwards. We are going to, the page 2 is going to start from the section 4, common size. So common size is now selected. So what we are going to do, we hold down the shift key and we highlight downwards until we reach the net income. But for the net income, we said we have to leave one extra line. So we go, that is our first net income. So we go to the last one, percentage change, until income state. So that's where net income is on page, on row 76. But we want it to be, we leave one extra line, we go to 77. You can also highlight across using the right arrow, then you go up to that point. If you don't want, you can just maintain it to where it's been. So that's what we are doing. So from there you hit OK. So after hitting the OK, you can now go to Alt, W for view, then I for print review. We can now see that we have, that is our page 1. So the page 2, we need to highlight it. We've made a mistake again, but at least today we've done something, because even this one is supposed to be highlighted up to this point. We're supposed to highlight everything there. But at least you've gotten what you wanted to have. So now you can actually see that this first page is going to have that kind of information. That's how it's going to be looking like, because those other things we set them up. So now that we've seen, because what I want you to get is that here we can see we have page 1. This is page 1. And down here, this is what I wanted you to identify. We have a separator. It's like it has been separated. And this one says, this one is page 2. So we are going to be having only 2 pages there. So the second page is down below the first one. So one thing to note here is that everything wasn't fitting correctly on one page. So what we did was to adjust the scaling or the scaling level. So everything here is not all that fitting. So what we are going to do, we now come here and say Alt, then P for page. Then we are going to use SP. What we need to do is just to adjust the scaling. And now we can see the scaling right here. Adjust to 100%. The other one was adjusted, but not all the pages. One of the pages is not 100%. So if you find that this one is 100%, because it is by default on 100%. But now we can try and say we are going to put it on 90%, because not everything is going to be fitting on our page. Just like the way you're seeing, you can put it on 90, 85, 80, as long as it fits on the page. So that's what you should do. We can cancel this for a moment because we can't complete, because we didn't highlight the whole of this item here. That's why we are not completing. So we can now go back to the normal view. This is what I'm meaning, that you are seeing this small line here is cutting some of the values, but you want it to be adjusted. and you can actually be able to see everything in one place. So let's go back to our normal view. Alt W L. That's the normal one. So even here, if you want to just adjust it, Alt P, then SP, we just use now the right arrow. We can just come here and we change it. We change something here. We can hold down the shift and we use the down arrow to complete this to that section there, and we hit enter. You'll actually see that things are actually coming out. Alt W for view, then I. You will see that we have everything as we needed them. We have our page 2 selected right and our page 1 selected right, but these figures are not fitting on the page. So what we do, we add just Alt P, then we go to SP, then we look at this one. This one is always at default 100%, so we can make it, let's say 90, let's say just use 80, and we hit enter. Okay, you will see that these values are now going to be fitting on these papers when we print them out. So you can also adjust it to any page, any, whether 80, whether 70, so that you can actually have something that is fitting on the piece of paper as you print it out. So let's quickly go back. Alt W L to normal. Now we've highlighted everything as we wanted. We are back to the normal view. So hopefully those tips are helpful, and I hope you have understood now how to toggle everything over the landscape format, and you can adjust the scaling level and also select each page individually, which is really the secret to getting the print setup correctly. Now, as we've finished the print setup, let's just go to the next video where we are going to show you how to save PDF formats, and we are going to show you also how to have some of those print preview shortcuts that we can use. So we see you in the next video as we are looking at print preview. Thank you for watching. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now looking at print preview. So in this video, we want to make sure you understand how to export the financial model into a PDF format. We are going to show you one of our favorite shortcuts that we can use to get us to a full screen print preview and view everything exactly how it would look like on a paper. So let's take a look and see what we have. So let's look at how to save in PDF format. So we can navigate over the cover page now and just go to the cover page. So by going on cover page, if you don't want to use the mouse, you can just come here and say you hit Control Page Up. It takes you to Control Page Up, takes you to the cover page or the next sheet. Then Control Page Down takes you back to where we were. So let's go back to the cover page. So now what we want to select both tabs because we want to print. We want to get a print review. In other words, we want to have the cover page on and at the same time the model coming through at the same time. So we want to select both the cover tab. So what are you going to do? We are going to use we are going to hold down, because we are selecting these two tabs. We are selecting cover tab and analysis tab, or we are selecting cover sheet and then analysis sheet. So we are taking two sheets. It's like we are printing our workbook. So what we are going to do, we hold down Control and Shift. Then we are going to use the page down. When we use the page down, you are seeing these things, they are like connected. We use Control plus Shift. We hold down those two and then we do a page down. So Control plus Shift, and using page down, we'll select both the tabs like the way you're seeing. So what now we want to get into the file menu. So we go to Alt, we hit the Alt key once, and right up here you will see F, and that F is for file. So we come down here and hit F. F for file, and it has taken us to the backstage view. So we are this side of the backstage view, and now we can sit down on our left hand side. We can see F for savers here. F for savers. So we go to A, savers, and this dialog box will actually come up, the one for savers. It comes up, and what we want to do, we want to use the tab key now. We use the tab key to move, because that tab key will let us, it will allow us to move, to navigate to these other different items, as you can see from there, because we want to get into this area here. So we hit the tab key once. It has taken us to that area. So now we can come here and use the down arrow. We want to add a space. Actually, we can select from any of this. We select where we want our files to be. Where we want our files to be, I can select that I want to put them on desktop, this new folder. So we can put it there. Now, for this one, we can now use the mouse, or you can still use the tab key. We select it. So instead of saving it as an Excel file, we are going to just move all the way down to here, to this point, PDF. So if you had used the tab key, you could just hit the enter there. So you can also hit the tab key just to take you down to that save button. Or you just use the mouse and hit, click on tab on save, and you find that your file has been saved as a PDF. So we have quickly saved that document as a PDF. Now, there is another way we can actually add our print preview into our quick access toolbar. This side, we can actually add here. We add in the print preview, and by adding it there, it will give us an absolute shortcut that we can actually use. So what we are going to do, we can hit Alt key. We go down to F for file, and now we can go for more. That is 00. No, the other one is a figures. Can use the escape key to back out. Alt F, then OO for more options. Then we go to options there, and now we can have that dialog box in place. When that dialog box comes, we are going to use the down arrow to get to this point for quick access toolbar here. So we are now in the quick access toolbar, and we are going to the default here. These are the defaults that we have. So the default is the one that has those popular commands, the popular commands that we can use, or we can customize ours. So we use this little down arrow here, and we try to add in what we want to. We can see that we've seen all the commands. And now from all these commands, we can now, if we tap P, from there we shall get that print preview. And now we are going to use, we are now in that print preview. We are now in the print preview, but we want to print preview full screen. So we can use the page down maybe, instead of using the page. Look for that print preview full screen. We go down a page down, print preview full screen. So let's just add this. We come here, we add. It's now here, print preview. We have already the print preview. We can now go ahead and close this. Come here and hit OK. Then we have that print preview. So when we come here and say Alt 3. So we are going to go now to tap Alt 3 for print preview. You can actually see how these things are actually going to come out. That's the first page. Then that's the second page. I hope you can be able to see. But the reason as why it is small like this, because I changed the scaling to 80%, 80 or 70%. But if you keep on adjusting the scaling, it will be able to fit automatically. So that's what we can see there. So we can see the full screen print preview. So this is the cover page. And now we can see, because if you print, that's how you are going to have that displayed. So let's just tap the escape key for now. We've now left that side. So we can now hit the down arrow here, this side of the, from this side, we can now try to zoom out a little bit to 100%. So now we have everything in focus. So if you use the down arrow, you are just going to be moving to those different sections, as you can see. But now, so we've finally done what we wanted to do. So there is a very small thing that we need to clarify from this. It is just a matter of it's just a word of caution. It's really dangerous to just leave these different tabs grouped together, because when they are grouped, it means if you do something to one tab, it will happen to both of the tabs. These ones, this cover and this analysis, they are all grouped in one place. So if we leave them ungrouped, if we do something, it is going to affect all the pages. So if something happens to one tab, it means it is going to affect the other tab. So we need to ungroup them. So we hold down the Control, then we use the page up and page down buttons. So now we can navigate to the different sections. It's not always good to leave them grouped, because once you do something on one page, it will be affecting the other pages. So now we are okay. So since we have those sheets ungrouped, then we can now close the model, because we have just finished what we wanted to set up, and just the last video is going to be maybe an appreciation for the time you dedicated, because we've been through a lot, we've learned a lot, we have gone through so many things to make sure that we have a model that looks so professional, and we're also glad that we are able to share all the aspects that we actually know, so that you can be able to understand how some of the things can be done. But as far as this video is concerned, we've been able to have a print screen full screen, print review, and we have also been able to know how to save these documents in PDF formats. So that's all for now. Let's meet in the next video where we're going to be giving the closing remarks of the summary, giving the summary of the course, because there are certain things that we expected to learn. So we want to evaluate ourselves. Have we actually picked the right things that we were supposed to pick from the course? Thank you for watching. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now summarizing our course. We've done whatever we've gone through, and we are now concluding that the course really ended. We hope you really enjoyed this course, and we certainly love sharing all of this interesting material with you. Hopefully, you are now able to identify the main parts of the Excel interface, difference between workbooks and worksheets, and also the ribbon, the name box, and the formula bar. And we hope also that our message has been loud and clear about the advantage of using the keyboard over the mouse. If you started using the keyboard for the first time in this course, definitely just keep it up, and you're really going to thank yourself later as you get so much efficient with the computer. And also remember that these PDF files, the Excel sheet that we've been developing, is going to be shared to our Telegram channel. You can go there, download. As you do yours, you can be able to check through to see what you've done and what you failed and what you've done right, because we believe this has been an interactive tutorial whereby you'll be able to download the template from our Telegram channel. It is connected to that same channel that you are watching. It is there under the link is there. So you can check in the about section, you check there is a link, you join the Telegram channel, download, and there are also other useful materials as far as accounting and finance is concerned. Secondly, you have to understand that there are many different settings in Excel. There are very many, and they are pretty overwhelming. Hopefully, in this course, we are able to take you through the most important settings that you are going to use as far as financial analysis and financial modeling are concerned. One of the things that we also able to do is show you how we showed you how to customize your quick access toolbar. We started by setting it up with increasing decimals, decreasing decimals, and also finalized with the print preview. But now that you have known how to actually work around those things, you can start to load that quick access toolbar with other things that can actually help you get more efficient. So we also went through in this course some of the most basic features and functions within Excel that we believe they are always used as far as finance and accounting is concerned. And again, there is so much within the software of Microsoft Excel. It's great to be able to focus. It's always great to actually focus on those that we believe that they are more commonly used or they are most relevant as far as financial analysis is concerned. And finally, just to summarize things up, we hope you have also enjoyed some of the most advanced features in the software, like tracing precedents, tracing dependence, print settings, and also the print preview within the software. And as we mentioned, it's just been great to be able to share some of the exciting Excel materials with you. And we'll see you soon in the next course, because we are going to look at some more advanced courses that are going to actually add some more knowledge to our understanding, because we haven't done, there are certain things we haven't done. We are going to look at so many as far as Excel is concerned. So we'll see you in the next video. Endeavor to subscribe, like, share to others. They also have the same benefit you have actually gotten from our course. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.